That's funny you should ask, ma'am. We are here at Santa Cruz doing our very first DIY video for those that want to retrofit their beautiful G2 with our new, much simplified rudder control system. And if you stick around, ma'am, you're going to see an amazing thing. Good. Okay, so welcome to Santa Cruz's first video on DIY retrofitting of the rudder control system from the old Dyneema cable to a new, very fancy stainless steel cord single cable. What we've got here laid out are the tools that you're going to need. You're going to need a good Phillips head, 7/16 and 1/2 inch box wrenches, screw gun. You're going to have a couple of different size drills. You're going to do 3/16, 5/16, and 3/8. Aside from that, you really don't have a lot of tool requirements. Next, we're going to go to the hardware package and the parts that you're going to receive in the kit when you get it from us. You're going to have an updated rudder control system. You probably have the old style that has 2 sides on it. We've updated it to a single push-pull system. Of course, the new cable, a backer plate that retains the cable, screws to hold the control lever in place, hardware to hold your backer plate in place, and then right this way. Then you're going to have your rear captivating plate, the Sundry hardware, your rudder system with a plate that's going to be attached to that. Good. Okay, so what we have here is one of our new G2 Urban Camo boats, and we're going to show you from start to finish the install of the new rudder control system that we just went over the parts and tools needed with you. The first thing that we do is we remove the handle, the side handle from the gunnel, and then we fit on a template or a jig that allows us to drill the holes exactly where they need to be. Now when you get the kit, you will have a laminated cardboard jig that you can use. Key parts of this are lining up the top 2 holes so that that's kind of a reference point for you, and then that leaves these 3 holes in perfect location for marking. I'm going to go ahead and drill. The 2 holes that are closest to the rear of the boat are 3/16 holes. The front hole is a 5/16 hole. That's for your actual lever control. Voila, there's your holes. Now what I normally do, I actually upsize these holes to a 1/4 inch because those plates are a lot easier to get. It's kind of a blind plate. You've got to stick your hand up underneath it here to get that plate in. It's easier to line up the holes by oversizing the holes a little bit. So what we're going to also do is we're going to drill a penetration through the hull up here on this this one mounting bracket here. Actually, it's just where it's formed to accommodate the rudder control cable going through. So we're going to put a 5/16 hole through here, which gives us enough room to fish the cable through, as well as fit a grommet on to help make it waterproof. All right, so now we've got the hole drilled and we're ready to go. We just have to remove these 2 stop nuts off the end of the cable, because we're going to use, we're going to put these back on once we get it through this hole and up towards the front of the boat. So what we do is we just fish that on through. Actually, rip those nuts off. We're going to put this grommet on. That'll just help us to make the boat a little bit more watertight. And it slides right on. This is a fitted grommet for this sized cable. So we're going to fish that all the way up so it's out of our way. And then we're going to fish our cable through the hull of the boat up towards the front hatch. And that's about the right amount of distance to have right there. We'll grab those 2 stop nuts and bring them towards the front of the boat where we're going to start the control assembly. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to reach inside the hull of the boat and magically pull out the end of the cable. This is the business end that we need. So we're going to go ahead and thread those nuts back on. Typically I take them to about the first nut, about 1/4 of an inch from the back at the bottom of the threads. Go ahead and, can't do that yet. We'll put the retainer plate on, and then thread that other nut on. And you'll see there's a slit in this plate that the cable can slide right through. And then you just put your fitting through it. And then this nut, we're just gonna hand tighten for right now, because we got to put the actual rudder control lever on. So we'll take all this hardware off. The lever handle is always tough to get off and on, so be ready for that. It's kind of a pain, but that snug fit makes it a lot better to get rid of all that slop. Just pull that black plate off. This is what's going to go inside the boat. It's a rubber spacer bushing and the actual control arm. All right, that goes inside. Now what we found is it's better to have that acclimated this way, so that the cable is or your Z-bend is facing towards the inside of the boat. So hopefully you see that the Z-bend, the tip of it's on the outside, what will be the outside of the boat. So we're going to now put this, now that we've got it acclimated the way we want, we're going to tighten down these 2 nuts. Okay, so we've got the nuts tightened down on this cable and this retainer, this retaining plate. Real important, tighten them down hard, use a Loctite or some type of thread lock on it, because you don't want this to come undone. It's a real pain once you've got the boat put together. It's a pain to get this back apart and then tighten down again. So put some oomph into it and some Loctite. Okay, now what we do is we take the cable and we're going to fish it back through the boat. And it's a lot easier said than done. Come on around this side, Greg, because you're going to see easier this way, I think. The first thing I do is find that 5/16 hole and start working the lever controller through it. You want to keep that lever towards the upward acclimation. So when you're looking inside the boat, you'll see that lever is straight up and down. I'll do a video of a boat that I've cut a hole in the side so you can actually see it from the inside. All right, so from there, what we're doing, we're going to go ahead and put these, we're going to make the connection of the plate to the actual boat. And you'll see that I'm doing this. It's pretty no fuss, no muss. Notice these holes are oversized. That's why it's no fuss, no muss. Just happened. All right, so that way these line up real nice. Even if you got arthritis in your hands, it makes it easier to line up. And I do have arthritis in my hands. All right, so we got our, there you go. And that should pop in nice and tight. Get a close-up of that if you don't mind. See how much thread is showing. That's about what you should have sticking out through the boat. That way you're guaranteeing a firm attachment to the boat. I go ahead and tighten these up while I'm here. You can always mess with them a little bit later if you need to. You shouldn't have to. All right, so the next part that we're going to install, it's the containment or the capture plate for the end of your cable. You'll see that it goes in kind of the same way, it captures it. Pull that off so you can see it a little bit better how it works. This is also the side that you adjust from. So once we get this plate mounted, and then the rudder gudgeon plate and the rudder installed, we'll fine tune it from this side before we tighten it up. All right, so this plate, you'll see, now your boat might not have two formed in studs. All the new G2s have formed in studs here that line up with this plate. I think in the past we used to put one of these studs in, now we put in two. If you need extra well nuts, we always send extras, these and the longer screws, because it takes a longer truss head screw to get through your metal and draw this up so it gives you a good snug fit. Same setup that we were going to use on the gudgeon plates on the back, but we'll show you that in a second. So all we're doing is we're just lining these bad boys up. As you can see very clearly, the arthritic hands at work here. And it should be a nice, real important with these, do not cross thread them. It is a pain. You got to tap them out. The plate should fit on real nice. Now I leave this back one loose for the time being because the gudgeon plate for the rudder, the top part of it actually fits right underneath. If you want to get a close up of that, see how that fits underneath, then you know you're lined up correctly. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark where this goes. Notice we line up the outside edges. Put a mark there. Put a mark there. And that's going to be your first drill point for your 3/8 drill bit for your well nuts. Because we got 2 well nuts that go here and 2 that go in the back of the boat. And you'll see how we set that up in a minute. Alright, no fuss, no muss. Well nuts should drop straight in. And make sure you clean up any of that slop from around the hole. These things make a really nice watertight fit if you've done the job correctly. They just drop right in. And then your gudgeon plate with 2 truss head screws should fit right in. Now I usually just leave that finger tight for right now because we're going to do the backside gudgeon plate connection point the very next thing. Now you'll see a lot of folks do this way. Doesn't really matter, but what I've noticed, that makes the holes in your boat an inch lower, and I always worry about any possible water penetration. So I flip this thing over and go just like that, and then that way you've moved the holes, you've acclimated those holes above the water line. So same thing here. Oh man, I'm getting old. Same thing here, you just find your spots, mark, remove that plate, then drill your holes. And for those of you that are getting nervous about drilling holes in this part of your boat, these plates, or these well nuts, do a very good job of drawing in on themselves, so they create a watertight connection point. So don't fear, don't fret, it's all good. You don't need much of a connection point. Okay, that's just about on my nerves. So now do your screws on this side. Make sure not to push them in real hard. Believe it or not, these little well nuts will actually push in and end up inside of your boat. So you want to make sure you're drawing up tight first and then torquing them down. A lot of people, I've seen them go like this and pop them in, and then all of a sudden the well nut's inside the boat. You don't want that. I'm just initially just gently tightening these down. We'll torque them down really good here in a minute. We just want to get all of our connections done first, and then we'll tighten. Same thing here. We normally use a screw gun in production, but we're not using it here today because we want to take as much time as possible and steer you in the right direction. All right, now we're tightening down our one that goes into a brass fitting. The ones that are going into your well nuts, no need to totally go crazy on tightening them down. You just want to draw them up so that they're tight. You'll feel them tightening up as you continue through the process here. And once again, you know, every now and again you want to go back and check all your hardware. You know, especially these well nuts, they have a tendency to want to loosen up a little bit. Every time we use our boats, we check all of our hardware, including our handle hardware. You just don't want anything to fail while you're enjoying your boat. Okay. Now, we're going to make the connections to the rudder. Okay. Now's when the fun starts. So here's our rudder assembly. It's a true course rudder from Select Designs. They've updated it or upgraded it with a bungee return. Evidently they were getting stuck in that position, so they put a bungee return so it doesn't do that anymore. You'll see there's a stainless steel plate that we fabricate that bolts right up with just two, I think these are number 8 half-inch machine screws, or I'm sorry, wood screws that we just connect it with. Nice good connection point. We just let that drop right down into there. You take your cable, and as I said, you want to bring them up on this. And just finger tighten it down. Don't make it too super tight. You'll see there's a little ball bearing return that holds this pin into this hardware as well as into your cable. So we just go through the cable, or through the hardware, into the cable connection, and it's one of those little terminals that they put on them. They usually need to screw it in a little bit to get it to stay. There you go. Now, one thing we've noticed is this ring, if this pin is up high, this ring can actually get in between, jam up, and we've actually seen a cable bent. One of our dealers had in Norway. So what you want to do is you want to make sure when you insert this pin, push it all the way down. Then there's no way for this to interfere. So we're looking at an upgrade of a smaller ring on this, but for right now, as long as you push it in, it works just fine. As you can tell, we're backing up a little bit because this has to go underneath of your bungee. If it doesn't, then your bungee is going to catch on it all the time, and you're going to put in a kink in the cable. Not good. So backtrack, go ahead and do that real quick. Slide your grommet up. Okay, now we're back where we were before. We're going to go back and we're going to set this thing where it belongs. All right, and put our pin in it. All right, we're going to push our pin all the way down. There's plenty of clearance for that pin to function. So just that way this doesn't catch. All right, now we also come back in here and we put two of these 3/16 cable clamps, and you can put them wherever you want. There is no right and wrong place. I happen to opt to just look at my cable and kind of dress it up. You don't want a big crimp or an angle here. You want to make this a nice smooth sweep so that your control, you know, when it goes back and forth, doesn't bind up. All right, so we'll take a second, put one of these cable clamps in, and then you can always decide where you like to put your next one. I put it up near the rudder, or near the rudder. All right, so this cable connector, and then I put another one back here. You can put it wherever it makes the most sense for you. You can always pull it and manipulate it as you see fit. When the time comes, I'll put it there. We're going to move to the front of the boat. finish up our lever control connections, and then we'll fine tune it. All right, now you'll see that we put the handle back on, and we're going to go ahead and put the lever on. One thing that we'll do now is we'll make sure we tighten up all this Phillips head hardware that's holding our backer plate here. Let's go ahead and make sure all this is tight too. Don't forget to put your handle back on. Okay, so now we've got this black, it's almost like a bushing, it's more of a beauty ring, it just looks a lot better than that. And it also allows us to connect it on both sides so that the lever doesn't want to slide in and out. So what we normally will do is just put 2 sheet metal screws in. I think they're like number 8, and it's just enough to snug it down. It keeps it from wanting the plate from spinning, and also sandwiches that hardware so it doesn't want to go anywhere. All right, so now put our lever on. We're going to put a nylock nut, real important nylock nut. And that's a 1/2 inch nut, so get our hard tools for it. Oop, wrong way. All right, and then just tighten them down. Hold your lever so it doesn't end up spinning around inside the boat and bending the wire, which is never good. And I take this all the way down where it's kind of snug, because you want your rudder to stay where you put it. You don't want to have to constantly be managing, holding your hand on the rudder control. And you don't want to get it too tight. And what you see is some of the nylock nut coming off because of the sharp edge on that. But now you can see wherever you put it, it'll stay. Just firm it down. It doesn't have to be real tight. Okay, now if you look towards the back, that's straight up and down. And you can see, if you bring the camera on around, you can see that the rudder is cocked off to one side. That's why we just hand tighten these. A little bit more. There you go. Now she's nice. The rudder is nice and straight. The control lever is nice and straight. And what we'll do is we'll take that same 7/16 wrench set and we'll tighten this down. Once again, you can put Loctite on this. This isn't as critical because it's where you can get to it very easily. And sometimes if you need to adjust it, Loctite becomes a pain in the rear end to deal with. So I would just say hand tighten these down to where you're comfortable. And then Greg, if you'll keep on the rudder, you'll see as we go through the motions, there's your range of motion. You'll see there's a stop on the back of this terminal, which you'll need to get close for. There's a stop on the back of the terminal that stops the rudder at that angle. And then in the opposite direction, you'll see there's a stop bar right here that stops it as well. That just keeps you from bending your cable. The deflection you see here, we've run a couple of these rudders, about 10,000 cycles, and we haven't had any failure on that. The only failure has been, and I'll show you what to avoid. When you pull this rudder off to either store the boat or put the boat, in your truck or your car or whatever, we recommend you put this cable on this stop. That's what it's there for. It's actually intended as a stop so your cable doesn't get bent. Whatever you do, don't have the cable on that and mess with your rudder control. It will bend the cable inside the boat. Very, very pain in the rear end thing to happen. There's not too many things we can do about it. Just remember, if you've got your cable terminal on that stop right there, don't touch the rudder control. When you get to your destination, pop that off, pop your rudder in, put your retaining pin, just push them all the way down. It takes a little bit of oomph, but you got muscles. You're a kayaker. And then just remember your pin at the bottom of your rudder so that your rudder doesn't pop off. It probably won't with this cable here, but reinforce that rudder staying in place with your retaining pins. And whatever you do, don't forget, press in the grommet. That just helps with a nice waterproof fit. That's it for this first DIY. If you have any problems, email us. You can call us at our office, 410-489-4221. I think the kit is $299, and we send extra parts, extra hardware, and if there's anything you need on it, always feel free to call us. Thank you so much. Greetings from Santa Cruz. Happy kayak.